Good morning. Today is Tuesday, August 6th. We are at Halifax. We are going to have a short excursion very shortly. City. There, run this way. 哦，确实有 boat， 我以为没有 boat， 可能人家先来停啊。哦，这还有 port。It's a big one, I think. Ryan, say hi. 哎，小心漏出来哦，那个。哦 ，Celebrity Eclipse。哎，你看那个地方还有个 island 在那个里头，还有是不是 Portrait？
Housing actually covers a lot of this end of the city in separate buildings, large and small. So our hospitals here, a lot of them are training hospitals. They're all public. So all the doctors, the doctors and nurses and the dentists, they're all paid for through public funds. Dentists are still private, but there's a move to make some of the dentistry now available to people through taxes. They're making it a little bit more universally accessible to the public. So this is a unique design here of this bank, the Bank of Nova Scotia. So the Bank of Nova Scotia started here in this province, but also we have 5 major banks in Canada, and 3 of them started in Nova Scotia, the Royal Bank, the CIBC, and the Scotia Bank. So we were an extremely wealthy part of the country at one time, and then we joined Confederation, and a lot of the wealth left here and moved to central Canada. But we were originally the 14th colony, so when New England was all together from Georgia all the way up to Nova Scotia, and then 1776 happened and we had the separation between the United States and Canada, British North America at the time. So we've got a church downtown that was when they built it in around 1750, it was milled, the wood was milled in Maine, which was all part of Britain, or the New England at the time. And so the wood was shipped up from there and all numbered and then put back together like an IKEA piece of furniture here, and that's the oldest Anglican church in British North America, and it still stands today. It's right down next to City Hall. So did anybody get to walk around downtown already? Do the waterfront while you were waiting? No? You just came right off the ship? Okay. Very good. So this will be the only part of the city you'll see then. You're right. Okay. And you're off to Sydney, Cape Breton tomorrow, I hear, and then Charlottetown. Nice. Where after Charlottetown? Portland. Okay. So Dave here is from Prince Edward Island. Did you live in Charlottetown? Summerside. Oh, okay.
Oh wow, look at this hotel.
The big city of Summerside.
Atlantica.
15,000 people. How many in Charlottetown? 35? And that kind of ship was coming in, and any military communications would be made with that. They could make a military communication from here all the way to Annapolis Royal, which is about a 2.5, 3-hour drive from here. They could send a message prior to electricity in about 20 minutes. So it was pretty impressive. Yes.
Domino piece.
So this is Quimpool Road. This is one of the main roads in and off the peninsula. So Halifax is made up of the mainland and then peninsular Halifax. So we're on the peninsula here. It's surrounded 3 sides by water. So you have the harbor where your boat is docked, and then Bedford Basin at the far end, which we'll see at the end of the day. And then we're going to be coming up to what's called the Northwest Arm here in a short minute, or a long minute. So we have the south end of Halifax, which we just came through. We have the west end, which is straight ahead on the right, and then the north end, which is on our right rear. And then the east end, we don't actually call it the east end of Halifax. We call it downtown or the waterfront, where we started. But we don't actually say the east end of our city. So it's south, north, and west ends. Here's our local councillor there. One of them. Mr. Cleary. Yes.
India
Okay.
Queen. No.
We just passed over.
Okay. We're just doing a little bit of coordination here.
Bank of Montreal.
Omelette branch
Didn't you know that
and
people
munch.
was Canadian?
Yes, I do know.
They did want to build an apartment building there, and word got out, and the American Marines came up and made sure that didn't happen. So luckily, it's been kept the way it was. It's still a small park there. Now, in keeping with the War of 1812 and the American connection, there's a gentleman who's buried in downtown Halifax in the old graveyard there, and he was responsible for the White House becoming white. I guess he was the fellow who took charge of the Canadians, or the British at the time, who burned the White House when it was, I think, pink or rose, and when it was repainted white, it's stayed white ever since. So he went on to Baltimore and was shot by an American sniper, and they put him in a rum barrel and sent him back to Halifax, and he's buried here. The joke.
Maybe not in this neighborhood, but
Oh.
I know we're not very far.
I think they did. You know, the joke goes there was some stiff drinks to be had in town after that. So they say the Citadel, Tim Hortons here, where there's Tim Hortons everywhere. I'm told it's now owned by a Brazilian company. It's synonymous with Canadian culture, but it's owned by Brazilians today.
Huh.
So Tim Horton was a hockey player, and he partnered with a guy named Ron Joyce from Tatamagouche, Nova Scotia, when he lived in Ontario. And then when Tim passed away in a car accident, Ron took it over and then bought out Tim's wife, and eventually turned it into a multi-billion-dollar corporation. That might add 30 seconds or a minute to the trip. So we've got Acadia maple there, maple syrup products on the right-hand side. Nova Scotia does have a small maple syrup industry. Quebec, however, is the big player in the maple syrup business. They produce 70% of all the maple syrup in the world. I think Vermont is probably the second largest area. So wild blueberries, though, we're famous for our wild blueberries, which are the small low bush blueberries. Those are 70% of all grown in Canada are grown here in this province. So this is our first taste of ocean water here on the right. So this is the head of St. Margaret's Bay. So we're going to the cove at the very end. Peggy's Cove is at the mouth of St. Margaret's Bay. So any water we might see on the right will be fresh water. Any water we see on the left will be fresh water. Any water we see on the right will be salt water. So along here, most of the boats are recreational. Even that one out there that looks like it used to be a fishing boat is now a recreational boat. There is still a fishery here in Dover, which we won't see, but Peggy's Cove itself is a commercial fishing area. So there's a number of commercial boats there in the cove you'll see. And there's a couple down here on the right-hand side we'll be passing. But for the most part, the commercial fishery is much reduced from what it used to be, even 50 years ago. Your neighbors would look like you never pull somebody else's trap. So let's say they put 100 traps in the ocean. They would go out and fish those traps, 50% of them one day and then 50% the next day. So they would pull up 50 traps, take out any lobsters, put some fresh bait back into the lobster trap, drop them, and then move on to the second one, and then the next day they'd come around and do the others. So when they come out of the ocean, they usually measure the body to make sure that it's large enough. They've got a little bit of a measure, and if it's not large enough, it goes back into the ocean, live another day. And then if they pull out a lobster that has eggs on it, they usually put a notch in the tail and it goes back in the ocean. And then if it's pulled out by another fisher and there's no eggs but they see that notch, they'll know that that is a breeding female and she goes back in the ocean. So that way they've been able to maintain the stock quite well all around the province with those habits. So we're lucky enough in this province, extra time here, where we got held up a bit. So take a look to your left and right, see who's beside you, so that if somebody's missing, we've got some idea. You can tell me what they look like, what color they were wearing, if they had a hat, male or female, and we can go out looking for them. But we do ask that you be back on time so we can get going. But it's always good to know who's next to you, because it helps when we do that final count before we take off.
No.
Yes.
Ooh, this is a good picture of me.
Really? Hey, 快来，转过来。 什么？
Can I skip stones?
你说你不懂 get into water，你还 skip stone，你掉下去就。Right, you should start that Titanic song. Shut 小心点啊，别，这是 slippery。哦，你看。
I'll be able to skip the stones.
对呀，你掉下去就死了。
Why is it splashing so much?
That's the wave.
But the moon is not. But the moon is not
对，刚
out.
才在那个地方照这个灯塔挺好的，现在跑到这儿来反而是低一点高一点。
我在take a video, everything will be captured. Also, you need to go back to that point.
对，这段话可以删掉。
站在这，好好，刚才看着镜头就可以。
哎，转过来没人，看快快赶，没人看。
真是。
我当时在那跟你说吗？
That's crazy. $15.
They have Lucas's name.
Maple syrup.
They're all gonna be elaborate for that.
嚼毛不烂的这个什么东西？它是 coffee 啊，可能是对。Yes, it's coffee. 加的早了，然后。
Great little shop to walk through. So now if you ever make it back down here on the right hand side, there's a new development. This Holy Mackerel and the buildings in behind, there's a photo gallery in there. It seems to be closed today. But the Red Schoolhouse, they have a ceilidh in there where there's two musicians from Cape Breton playing fiddle music. It's about a half-hour show. So if you ever happen to come back here and that's happening, it's well worth the stop. Okay. So now if you look right in the center of all the fishermen here in the monument, Roger is the gentleman with the hat, just right of the fellow with the lobster trap. And he is still alive. Okay. We'll head out of Peggy's Cove. I'll give you a little break and I'll come back here in a little bit.
Did he mention how Peggy got her name? Peggy's Cove? There you go, thank you.
Hey, can you tell us how Peggy's Cove got its name and the population?
All right. So the population of Peggy's Cove in the wintertime is around 40 to 45 people. In the summer, it burgeons to a whopping 65 people, I think. There's some Airbnbs down there, but yes, it's usually not more than 70 people. It's a preservation area, so there's no new construction happening. They're trying to preserve it the way it is. And then the name Peggy, there's St. Margaret's Bay. Short for Margaret is Peggy, and the cove is at the head of St. Margaret's Bay. So, Peggy's Cove. And the other is that there was a young lady named Margaret who was in a shipwreck, was the only one who survived, was taken in by a local fisherman. They fell in love, and people used to come from all over to meet Peggy of the Cove, and eventually it was shortened to Peggy's Cove.
Today is Tuesday.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, Tuesday.
Do you think you can squeeze the heat a little bit?
Yes.
我的天呐！一早上拍了半天，不就拍这个？
Oh yeah, I had a Boston story. So the Halifax explosion on December 6th, that happened first thing in the morning, and people had coal or wood stoves burning, and a lot of those stoves, if the house didn't get knocked over. The stoves did get knocked over inside many homes, and the homes caught on fire. And then that night, we had a huge blizzard hit the city. And so we had an awful lot of people that were on the streets and destitute and freezing to death. And some of the first people that helped us came out of the Boston area. So they sent trainloads of people up here. They say that the entire graduating class of Harvard Medical School arrived and spent 2 to 3 months here. I'm assuming that's doctors and nurses. And in the night, and there's a part of town called the Hydrostone section of town, and as a lot of our buildings were all made of wood prior to that, and still are, as you can see today, but the Hydrostone section of town is all made of stone and wood, and it is an area of the city, we won't be passing it, but it was built by the people of Boston area. And in the 1970s, somebody had the idea of thanking the people of Boston on a more regular basis. So every year, people volunteer their trees, and there's a large Christmas tree that is selected every year. Doesn't matter what part of the province it is, as long as it's a good-looking large tree. Usually it's 40 or 50 feet in height. They put it on a truck, they send it down, and they light it up in the Boston Commons. So has anybody seen that? Thank you. It's wicked. Thank you. Yes. No, we're very, very appreciative of that. That was a huge-hearted thing to do. So, yeah, we were talking a little bit about accents. So I'm from Nova Scotia. So I tend not to say "a," which is a big Canadian thing, eh? That is usually in Ontario. That's a big thing up north. I used to hang out around Thunder Bay, and there was a lot of people in that area that would say "a." A common thing right across the country, though, is "out and about," or "aboot," right? That you can pretty much hear that wherever you are in Canada. Newfoundland, if you make it over to Newfoundland sometime, what's really interesting is the people there. There were no roads at first; they were all connected by ocean travel. So wherever people came from in the UK, each of those little villages in Newfoundland have their own sound, which is really unique. But yes, there's different accents even in Nova Scotia, but I tend to roll my R's, so I'll say car, which I'm told is a very Scottish thing. I had a friend from Saskatchewan. He used to tease me relentlessly about how I said car. Hey, Alan, you gotta take your car? Yeah.
Want to take your car?
Oh, the tide is out. We're going out. So did I talk about the tides on the way down here, the highest tides in the world? No? So a place called Burntcoat Head, which is about an hour and a half from here. So if you look at a map of Nova Scotia, it looks like a lobster. And the Bay of Fundy, which separates us from Maine and New Brunswick, there's billions of gallons of water that flow into the Bay of Fundy twice a day, and it comes around a place called Cape Split, and then it moves into the Minas Basin where it's sort of funnel shaped. So it really compresses that water as it comes in, the tide to low tide. Normally it's 45 to 55 feet, but when the tides are at the highest, it can change by 70 feet. So it's really something to see it. Halls Harbor is a great place to go to see the high tides. The boats are in the water, and then they're right down, they sit on the bottom of the ocean, and they're still tied to the wharf there. And then out in Burntcoat Head, it's a provincial park. You can go out there, and at low tide, they say you can walk on the ocean floor, which you can. You just have to watch when the tide turns. It comes in very quickly. Oh, we got a moth that has joined us here, up here. All right. So then also, when that tide is coming in, we have a couple operators there that run what's called tidal bore rafting, and they take rubberized boats out, so Zodiac style, and they'll drive into those waves, so they'll ram into them, and then they turn around and they ride them along, sort of like on on surfing on top of those waves. So it's a lot of fun. The water, however, is pretty mucky and muddy because it churns up so much mud along there. And if you drive to a place called Truro, there's a little park there called the Tidal Bore Park. And you can find when the tidal bore is coming through, and that's a small wave that comes up the river. Yeah.
Rich people should.
We should get those houses. Dad,
Huh?
we should get those houses.
Which one wants to leave? It's so cold.
Not that cold.
The number of people say they couldn't get into St. John's, Newfoundland, or into Greenland, or even Iceland. So some of those cruise ships came into Halifax unexpectedly for that reason, because they were due to go into another port and couldn't make it. And this time of the year, sometimes we gain ships that come into Halifax.
Which bus is that?
14 or 16? 16. Okay, over.
告诉他根本没 crew。就像个傻子一样，看我就烦我。
这是什么 soup? Onion soup.
No, it's garlic soup. Green garlic soup. Oh, the air gun on my nose was really hungry food. How do you already have your food?
因为这个可能 easy to get 吧，就那个吧。
Oh, that's what they mean by small portion.